Most pipelines don't fail because of effort. They fail because of what's been verified inside deals. Now, uh, let's ground this in some reality. 80% of forecasts miss, not by a little, by a lot. Most companies are 25 to 40% are off by 25 to 40%. And only a small percentage actually hit their number consistently. So the question isn't why did we miss? The better question is what are we building our forecast on? And this is where most teams get misled. Seller milestones don't equal buyer progress. A demo doesn't mean they're qualified, and a proposal doesn't mean they're late stage, and legal doesn't mean that they're committed. Those are seller activities. But deals don't move forward because of what a seller does. They move forward because of what the buyer confirms. And this is why deals slip, not at the end, earlier. Assumptions start to build, gaps kind of stay hidden, risks compound quietly. So by the time the deal slips, it didn't just go wrong, it's already broken. So here's the shift: stage progression isn't assigned, it has to be earned, not by activity, not by optimism, but by buyer confirmed evidence. Because progress isn't movement, progress is confirmation. Now, here's where it might get a little uncomfortable because, and I want to talk about this because most teams don't have a pipeline problem, they have a trust problem. So leaders trust their reps, they trust the stage, they trust the forecast, but they have no consistent way to verify what's actually true. And that is the gap. Not trust versus distrust, trust without verification. So, what do most teams do? They don't fix this. And I've seen this over and over again. They manage around it. Yeah, they increase pipeline targets. So they tell you you got to have a 4x pipeline or a 5x pipeline or a 6x pipeline. They add more deal reviews. We're going to do deal reviews twice a week instead of once a week. They scrutinize forecast harder. And what happens? What happens when you start seeing that? Pipeline gets inflated or it gets hidden, right? Because reps don't want to put anything into the pipeline because they're going to be, interrogated about it. You know who you are. Conversion rates get distorted, and your top reps feel not only mistrusted but micromanaged, and forecasts still miss because you can't pressure your way to truth. You can't pressure your way to truth. So, if activity isn't progress, what actually moves deals forward? What actually moves a deal forward? And I'm going to tell you, it's buyer confirmed alignment. Alignment on how they'll decide, alignment across the buying group, alignment with the economic buyer, alignment on urgency, alignment on success. Deals don't progress when you do more, they progress when the buyer becomes more clear, more aligned, and more committed. So let's make this real. This is an example of a 300K deal. It's sitting in commit. The rep has been working this deal for months and months, and it looks strong and it feels close. And there are real signals. There's a champion, there's a defined problem, there's a vision of success. But here's what's missing: it's not a priority across the organization, and the cost of inaction isn't truly established in the buyer's words. The buying group isn't fully aligned. So, what's at risk? Deprioritization, internal alignment, and the biggest one, no decision. This isn't a bad deal, but it's not a verified deal. And that is the difference. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting because in this example of that 300K deal, after this, we looked at that one deal. The CRO didn't ask about that deal again, but what she did ask was a better question. She was like, well, what if it isn't just this one deal? So we pulled a few more different reps, different accounts, different situations. And on the surface, they had nothing in common. One looked strong, one felt late stage, one felt committed. And if you were running the forecast, you probably feel good about all three. But we looked at them the same way we looked at the first deal. What has actually been confirmed? And that's when the pattern showed up. Not the same problem, but the same type of problem. In one deal, it was the cost of inaction was never truly established. So even though the problem was acknowledged, there was no real urgency. In another deal, legal was involved, pricing was being discussed, but the buying group wasn't actually aligned. And in the third deal, there was a verbal agreement, but decision authority and competitive exposure weren't fully clear. Different deals, different gaps, but the same outcome risk. Because what's missing wasn't consistent, but what was missing was verification. And this is where most teams get stuck. Managers don't miss this because they're careless. They miss it because they don't have visibility into what is actually verified. They're relying on stages, updates, and what reps believe to be true, so every deal looks different, even though the underlying issue is the same. And that's when it started to click. This isn't a deal problem, it's a pattern. And until you can see the pattern, you can't fix what's actually driving your forecast risk. So, and when you fix this, when you do, everything changes, right? Because forecasts become more accurate, pipelines become more predictable, and late stage deals actually close at a much higher rate. But the biggest shift, I would say it's enablement. Enablement changes because you stop coaching based on your opinion. Oh, we all need to be better at discovery. It's a very general question, a general statement. And now we can start coaching based on actual evidence. We can enable and we can coach based on actual evidence. And we stop reacting late and we start preventing early. And performance becomes something you can actually repeat. Now, when you fix deal truth, everything downstream changes. Pipeline trust isn't built in CRM, it's built in verified reality. And when that happens, forecast accuracy isn't a guess anymore. It becomes a function of what's actually true inside your deals. But none of that happens unless you can see the truth inside a single deal. And that's where most teams break because they don't have a consistent way to answer 4 simple questions. 4 simple questions. And this is the model behind it. 4 simple questions. What's true based on our stage to stage goals, exit criteria, and the verifiable outcomes that the customer needs to say at each one of these stages that would pass them on to the next stage? What's missing, right? What's at risk? And what's the path forward? Answers create confidence. Verification creates truth. And if these aren't verified, the deal isn't real. That's just the truth. So here's the test. Here's the test. And thank you for listening. If you trust your pipeline, verify it. If you don't trust your pipeline, You already know what to do. Verify it. Send me one deal. Send me one deal. I'll show you what's actually true, what's missing, what's at risk, and what needs to happen next. Not based on my opinion, based on what your buyer actually said. Send it over. I can't wait to help you trust, but verify.